Hey, this is Afro Sensei. Welcome to Lyrical Tea. Alright, so for today's track, I'm doing a song called Indra, which is from my album BGC. So first, get into the title of the song. Indra is the scientific name for a black butterfly, and in mythology, black butterflies typically symbolize after death or rebirth. In my case, this would be a rebirth. So that's where the inspiration for the title came from. So getting into the first verse of the track.
Who's he lies next to me? An Indra poised to fly. Always knew he could wield a sword, keep his own wings to survive. Mild manner, mind on the matters, those didn't matter at all. Doubts his life to endure the night, let's see angels until the dawn.
Okay, so in the first verse, at least the very first couple of lines, who is he lies next to me, and Indra poised to fly, that was very much based on conversations I've had with people within the last, I'd say, year and a half, 2 years, people that know me for a long time, basically saying some version of, I didn't know you had all this in you. Meaning just, in terms of my artistry and music and videos and everything else, it's kind of a surprise to them that this art will come out. And in a way, it's a surprise to me as well because, I had the idea for all of this, some of this stuff, but to really bring it out and carry it out, it's been as much as a surprise to me in some ways as it has to the people around me that know me for a long time. So that's what that line is for. And then getting on into the rest of the verse, say, douse the light to endure the night, versus an angel until the dawn, which is a biblical reference. So when Jacob was wrestling the angel all night, he would let him go until he gave him a blessing. So it's a reference to that. And just the idea that, in my younger days, when I was less secure in my identity and I was really more intent on trying to hide myself and really just blend into the background and not make any waves, basically dousing my light, dousing the thing that would maybe make me stand out or make me be unique in any way. I wasn't trying to do that. And it's a reference to that. Then getting on to the end of the verse.
Beat down but not bested. Gospel will return skeptic. Ratchet by reason falsies, religion superstitions had its season. Myths can mold heroes, but illusions can birth demons. In this big world of nothing, be light in finding your meaning.
For myself, being raised very religious and now not being religious, being an atheist actually, that's been its own process as well, not related to being gay, because even if I came out, I still believed for a minute, but then eventually I didn't believe any of it, just through my own belief that I needed to be objectively real, to make it short and sweet. And so it's a reference to that, the idea of like going through the whole process of religion and struggling with it and trying to make sense of it and finally realizing that I didn't believe in any of it. That's what that's a reference to. And then you have the last lines of the verse where it says, myths can mold heroes, but illusions can birth demons. In my view, even though I don't believe in any of it literally, I feel like myths do have a purpose. They can enlighten people. You can still learn lessons from it because a lot of them are allegorical. You can take something positive from them and maybe use it to inspire you or kind of show you how you should or should not maybe live your life. But when it says delusions can birth demons, meaning that people who sort of buy into their own myth, so to speak, they believe sort of they have delusions of grandeur. They believe things about themselves that maybe aren't totally true, or they have a inflated sense of self where the ego and the arrogance come in. That can lead to a bad outcome. So that's where that comes from. And then the last line, 2 lines I say, in this big world of nothing, delight in finding your meaning. Meaning that's taken from a sort of philosophy called optimistic nihilism, which nihilism is the belief in nothing, and basically the idea that life in and of itself is meaningless, nothing really has a meaning, which is kind of the nihilistic side of things. But the positive side of that is that if nothing has meaning and nothing has a purpose, that means we as human beings get to make our own purpose. So whatever brings you happiness or contentment or fulfillment, as long as it's not hurting anybody else, that can be your meaning. It doesn't have to be a grander purpose. It can be something very simple, or it could be something more ambitious. Whatever it is that makes you feel good and makes you feel like you're contributing, or makes you feel like brings you happiness or contentment. That can be your purpose in this big world of nothing. So That was the inspiration for the first verse. And then just for the chorus, the chorus was a play on, it was inspired by a track from Mariah Carey's Butterfly, the Butterfly Reprise, which in that track she sort of takes the original ballad and turns it into a house track, and she sort of makes the big gospel vocals and the background singers, and she returns into like a dance track and like more of a to me it sounds like a self-actualization, because in the original ballad she's kind of saying she's about to spread her wings and become a butterfly, and then for the reprise song she has become a butterfly. So in my opinion, so that was the inspiration for it musically, with the big stacked harmonies and things like that. So getting into the second verse.
Staring back at us, in dollars and cents we trust. Exploit the weak and build a violent rotten personality we lust. Rewrite the past, bankrupt the future, bankroll with the little world. Long as our ghost skins not escapable, watch as the other burns.
So the second verse, the first verse was about my own internal transformation. The second verse is really looking out at the world, America specifically, and questioning it. You know, with the first line of the second verse, it's a play on the first line in the first verse, saying, "Who is us staring back at us?" So it's not it's about an individual. It's about who are we collectively as a country. Who do we want to be? Because the last 4 or 5 years haven't been our best moments, in my opinion, and probably a lot of people's opinion. It says in personality we lust. We seem to be caught up more in the culture personality beyond just pop culture, but when they're about the politics, that's happened through millennia. But certain things are more true now. People want to rely more on emotion and about us versus them, than really trying to figure out how to fix what's really wrong and get to the root of the issue. And then says rewrite the past, bankrupt the future, bankroll the end of the world. The idea being that if you sanitize the past, not tell the whole truth about it, bury parts of it, then you can create a sort of a myth of what you want America to be, or what you think it should be, rather than what it actually is in its history. Which gets on to the other part of the verse.
Initiatic oil, cups run over with turmoil. Stir up the shit till we all just stink in the name of making us great. Heroes worn down the token, stars and stripes demand no less. All American deja vu, they're not as creative than oppressed.
But when I say initiatic oil comes from over turmoil, which is a biblical reference. When anointing your head with oil and covering over. But in this case, I'm just saying, there's a desire to want to forget. There's like I said, a desire to ignore the less pleasant parts of American history, whether that's slavery, whether that's sexism or the homophobia or the xenophobia, whether like Japanese internment camps and things like that. You can go down the list. There's always been a push to sort of just forget about it and just to push forward. But the problem with that is, if you forget about it and you don't address it, it just comes back up again. You bury it and it comes back up. You bury it and it comes back up. And that's a cycle that continues to happen, because people don't want to necessarily deal with the whole truth of what American history is. The bad parts and the ugly parts of it. They just want to focus on or try to sanitize those parts of it. So that inspired those lines. And then you get to the part where it says, heroes worn down a token, stars and stripes demand no less. Meaning people who in their time were considered radicals or threats to society, which Martin Luther King Jr. would be a prime example of that. In his lifetime, he was considered a radical and dangerous and a threat. Of course, he was surveillance by the FBI and eventually, assassinated. But now, some of the same people who probably, if they lived when he lived, would have been against him, now use him as this sort of watered down, sanitized symbol of this generic peace and unity. But they ignore the more radical parts of his message, like stuff about being against the war or about fighting poverty. They ignore those parts and just sort of water him down to this sort of two-dimensional "I have a dream" speech Martin. So that happens. People who are radicals tend to just turn into sort of tokens. You know. And then you get to the last part, where it says all American deja vu denies credit and oppress, which is another verse to what I said before about the cycle of just don't deny the truth, discredit those who try to expose the truth, and then oppress. And then that's how it seems to repeat in America. And maybe it will change in this past year with the George Floyd and the uprising and everything that's happened. But there's been a long history of moments where it seems like things are going to change, and and then people sort of find it easier to fall back onto what they've always known, to the status quo. So you never know. So yeah, some pretty deep stuff, or a house track. But I'm very happy with how it turned out. I think it really sums. I think it's the last track on the album, and I think it really sums up what happens over the course of the album and where I'm going next. Which stay tuned for that. So I'm Afro Sensei, and this has been Lyrical Tea. So thanks for watching.